Yeah, I don't know when to fill the... Yeah, I know how it works. Can I petition that we start doing 3 on the hands? 5 is too long, Jordan. I don't like this. And you count very slow as well. I understand it's probably because you forget the numbers and you got to be like, all right, 4 comes after 5, then 3 comes after 4. What's happening, everybody? Welcome to MLB Live Before Lock. Hope you guys had a great weekend. And now we're going to be breaking down an 8-game baseball slate. We got Paul Skenes pitching. He's a 1,000,000,000% owned. We also got a great $5 contest on DraftKings today. We got a $5 150 max, 50K up first that Eric missed out on, didn't enter his lineups, didn't reserve early enough today. We're sponsored by Underdog, but as you guys are watching, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you got questions for us and you're in our Discord channel, hit me up so I can answer them. Eric, what's happening with you? How was the big vacation?
Oh, the big vacation. Yeah, 2 days. We were able to go up Friday. I was able to kick it still with you on the show, was able to get all my work done. But yeah, was able to Friday, Saturday, Sunday unload over at Lake Tahoe. It was unbelievable. But when you fly in and out of Reno, you go over to Nevada. And so on our flight coming back, I wasn't able to reserve lineups. And when I landed, freaking everything was filled up basically already. So I don't know when it filled up. But it was early on today. So they had like the 3K to first. It didn't have a very good payout structure. So I'm playing just mini max, playing a $5, but I'm very, very envious because this is a phenomenal baseball slate. 8 games, and we have like trade risk in a couple of spots. Nothing crazy, because we have the Detroit game that isn't on this main slate, but like I'm bummed out because that is an awesome payout structure. And this is just an awesome slate.
Which spots are you most concerned with players potentially getting pulled from games, which we've already seen today? We had Justin Turner, which obviously wasn't on the slate because slate hasn't started yet. But earlier today, Blue Jays are playing. Justin Turner gets pulled midway through the game. I forget what inning it was in. And immediately see people outraged. They're upset online. How could this happen to me? So let's try to identify it. Not that we could do this for sure, but what are the spots that you're looking at as, hey, don't be shocked if somebody gets pulled from this game?
Yeah, so it's weird because this line is now like gone back in the White Sox direction in the last hour. Like it's back into like the -170 territory, but I don't know how the White Sox aren't the answer. Kansas City, I bet them yesterday, -164 with the full intention of like, I bet the White Sox could trade a couple players on Monday and Tuesday. And sure enough, I got exactly what I was looking for. Michael Kopech, who hasn't been Michael Kopech of old, but he's still a decent enough and valuable part of that bullpen. And then, of course, Tommy Pham getting traded away. So it's Nicky Lopez who is leading off. And pretty much everything is rubble. It's basically written in sand for the White Sox because anybody could move at any point in time there, and it would not shock me whatsoever.
There's hilarious market up on FanDuel because I was just looking through. I'm trying to figure out like, hey, this trade's happening. I just want to be aware of what the markets are, what could potentially be bet on. So I just tweeted this out because I'd never seen this up for baseball before. There's when will the Chicago White Sox win their next game? And then they just got odds up for like their next 7 games or something. And then there's a thing like the White Sox will not win a game in the next week and a half or whatever. And it's 10-1 odds. So things are bad in Chicagoland, at least as far as their on-field product right now. But I kind of like the trades they made just from a standpoint of they took a chance on some veterans that nobody else wanted. They signed very team-friendly deals. And it was like, they're not competing this year. If the players suck, either ride out the season with you or just cut them at the trade deadline, or guys like Tommy Pham play decent enough. There's a contender that has interest and you actually got a prospect back in return for him. So as far as things that the White Sox have done this year, it's probably the sharpest thing they've done the entire year is those signings leading to some trades.
Just pulling this up now. I didn't see this tweet from you. So like that, White Sox are going through it this season. Dude, this is so wild. This is so wild. When will they get their next win? I mean, Minus 170 isn't some like crazy line here on the other side, but I'm definitely on the Royals. Got Nicky Lopez leading off for your baseball team. What a time to be alive. But yeah, that's definitely a sharp move because they are about 48,973 pieces away from being a contender.
Yeah, they are many pieces away, and they just got some pieces today that are probably not going to pan out. But hey, it's better than nothing. Better than nothing. As far as the rest of the slate goes, Eric, any thoughts that you have before we start getting into it? There is some potential weather concern in the Cincinnati-Chicago game, but it's not anything that's going to cause me to pull players from my lineups or anything like that. Just kind of something to let people know there's a little bit of risk there. But anything else before we start breaking this down?
Yeah, I had on my alert. I usually am just like, hey, double check the weather here before we get on the show so you can actually know what you're talking about. But did St. Louis, I just was like going through my normal weather prep. Did anybody talk about St. Louis potentially being a rain spot?
I could pull up the weather right now. All right, St. Louis.
I don't think I saw that, but it looked dicey-ish to me.
No. There's a chance of rain, but it's not until midnight.
Okay. A little bit later there. All right. I just wanted to double check because I had a note there to say double check St. Louis weather, but that was from this morning.
Yeah.
So
it's a 40% chance of rain at midnight, and then around the start of game time, a 15% chance of rain. So like it could, but it's not anything that I'm going to react to.
Okay. Yeah. It was just something to bring up because I didn't see it anywhere that I normally get weather stuff from. And, News God and anything else. I didn't see anything concerning about it. But when I looked at it this morning, I was like, it kind of looks dicey, but glad that didn't come to fruition.
We got a question here from Posey wants to know, Greg and Eric, can we get your opinions on the war going on right now? Things are looking pretty good for the Blacks after last night. That's what I have to say. Did you watch the House of the Dragon?
Oh, dude, what?
Wait. Based on your action, what the hell did you think I was talking about?
I had no idea what you were talking about, but I was like, I'm not going to make any comment after this because Greg might just
I don't know what war he's talking about. I was just like House of the Dragon. I'll throw a House of the Dragon reference in.
I didn't know what was going on. All I know is that I didn't know if you were going to be Tucker Carlson Jr. or not. And I just wanted to hit eject sooner rather than later. Good times.
Yeah, I don't know what war it is that he is talking about. Also, there's something weird going on with the YouTube chat. Let me see if I could switch. It won't let me post in there right now. But what I'm logged in, I don't know what the issue is. Whatever. I'll just be on the lookout for anything that goes on in the YouTube chat. And as per usual, you guys have any super chats, throw those in. Eric and I will be answering those. We'll be answering questions people have in the Discord channel. But let's start getting into the slate now, Eric, beginning with Paul Skenes, because he's the most important piece of the slate by a mile. We'll start with him on DraftKings. We'll talk about him on FanDuel in a little bit as well. He's got a tough matchup on the road against the Houston Astros, but he appears to be, at the very minimum, one of the best pitchers in baseball right now. Best case scenario, he is the best pitcher in baseball right now, and that's how the field is playing him. He is on the road in Houston, 10,500. You and I were just talking on Friday about how DraftKings has stopped pricing pitchers above 10K. Well, guess what? Paul Skenes is 10,500 on the road in Houston. Tough matchup, 50% owned. What are you doing with Paul Skenes? You going to be at the field, overweight, underweight? This is a ton of ownership.
Yeah, this is a ton of ownership, but how is it not warranted? Like, the guy is outrageous. And I get that this is a difficult spot. I get that Houston here is, at the very least going to make life difficult on him with, some of the best hitters in baseball, specifically Jordan Alvarez. Yenner Diaz, he's been a right-on-right guy, had some reverse splits in AAA. It's kind of came to fruition here at the bigs over a full sample size. And then Altuve, Bregman, we know that, it's not their best season by any means, but they're still those kind of dudes. I look at the back half of this lineup, though. John Singleton, Jake Myers, Victor Caratini, Trey Cabbage. He could have a field day here that you just absolutely need. I'm just capping this, so I just did it this way. I went into the Sims tool. I set my exposure. You're able to just put a cap on it. I put him at 50% today. I don't think I'm going to get to more. I contemplated making it 65%, but whatever I set that cap to is how much I'm going to get to him. I just got done getting my last set of lineups in here. Paul Skenes was in 72% of them. If I cap it, he'll be in 50, but it's either going to be a lot more Paul Skenes for me or just the 50% number. How about you, Greg?
I'm a little bit overweight to the field on him. He's in about 2/3 of my lineups. And let me see, actually, am I getting any leverage stacks against him? No, I've 1 out of 150. So here's the upside and the downside of Paul Skenes on this particular slate. I'll be honest, I'm pretty scared of the ownership. At the same time, too, though, I look at the other pitching options, and I'm not in love with the other guys that we have potentially to roster a pitcher. So my initial thought when I looked at this slate is like, I love Paul Skenes. I assume I'm going to get to, some amount of him, but I thought I was going to be underweight to the field just based on what his ownership was. But then as I was going through the day, I'm building my lineups, running stuff through the sims, and also just trying to logically figure out, like, okay, in lineups that don't have Paul Skenes, who am I pivoting to? There isn't really anybody that I view as being a good comparable pivot option. So yeah, like I have some lineups that have pitchers like, Logan Gilbert in them, for instance, but I'm underweight to the field on him. I have some lineups that have Nathan Eovaldi, but I also don't really love the spot for Nathan Eovaldi either. I don't think it's a great strikeout matchup. So I come in with not a ton of Nathan Eovaldi. So like just by default, I landed on not that he's going to make or break my night. He's in more than half my lineup, so he's certainly in a lot of them, but the field's playing a bunch too. I'm just going to be a little bit overweight to the field on Paul Skenes, and I find it just very difficult to get away from him.
Yeah, it's truly impossible. I mean, he's just on another planet. And take this for what you will. Livy Dunn is over in Paris. He's focused, baby. He's focused. He's ready to rock.
I always get confused by some of those narratives, which I know you're joking. It doesn't mean shit to either of us. But like, because you will see people who be like, oh my God, he could focus on baseball. He's got his hot girlfriend is away. But then the same thing too, then it's like Will Levis posted something on Twitter about his new girlfriend. Everybody's like, oh, look how hot Will Levis, his new girlfriend is. He's clearly going to have a big season. Like, how is it both narratives at the same time? If you have them, it's good. If you don't, like, I don't get it.
Do you remember Moneyball when they're having the roundtable discussion about the fact that he doesn't have one of the prospects doesn't have a hot girlfriend, so he must have no confidence? Like, I think that's pretty funny. It's one of the great scenes of Moneyball.
Who are they talking about? Like Scott Hatteberg or something?
I can't remember. They were just sitting there being like, yeah, no, we can't do it. His girlfriend's a 6 at best or something like that, or a 5 at best. And it's just like a bunch of old dudes, old scouts having that conversation. I'm like, man, what a time to be alive. And like Aaron Sorkin I don't think he has a crazy sports background. I know he wrote Sports Night back in the day, but that was just revolved around TV. I do think it's fascinating to just hear that dialogue and how unbelievably precise it is, where it's like this old guard that cares about things that absolutely don't have to do with pitching baseballs. But I will say, I feel like my life would be better with, just Livy Dunn in it. So congratulations to our boy, Paul Skenes, who, 2/3 of your lineups. I'm going to make that 65% of mine as well.
How would your wife feel about that? If you're just like, all right, I got us another girlfriend.
Just get on board, baby. Get on board. Are you kidding me? This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Also, she makes way more money than either of us. Are you kidding me? Are you absolutely kidding me? To have Livy Dunn be the thruple? I mean, she'd be like, hell yeah, that's the dream.
Is Paul Skenes still in the picture too?
Oh, no. Paul Skenes has to go. It's the mustache. It's too creepy.
So I actually am going to disagree with this. I'm taking Paul Skenes with us too.
Okay. He is a tall drink of water. He is very good at throwing of baseballs. And this is the part where Chad starts saying, get back to the slate again. Get back to the slate.
Yes, Paul Skenes is the most important thing on the slate. There's nothing more important than Paul Skenes.
The Washington Nationals for me, but
he's the most popular player by a mile. He's projected for 50% ownership. We're going to talk about him on FanDuel in a little bit here as well. We've got some other pivot options we could potentially consider. Logan Gilbert on the road against the Boston Red Sox. He's 21% owned. You got Nathan Eovaldi. He's 13% owned on the road against the St. Louis Cardinals. If you are looking to get off Paul Skenes in any particular lineups, Eric, and we both established, you said you're going to cap him around 50%, which means you have him even with the field. You also have a bunch of him. Do you prefer Logan Gilbert, Nathan Eovaldi if you're pivoting, or are you going to go cheaper? And we'll talk about those cheaper pitchers in a bit.
So I do like getting to Seattle today against Nick Pivetta. Anytime Nick Pivetta is Anytime Nick Pivetta is chalky, I feel like playing him up. What I was going to say is that I think he's the obvious number 2 that you should be playing in cash alongside Paul Skenes. And I tried to say both of those comments at the same time, and that's how it worked out. But Paul Skenes, I just made it 65%. I capped him out there. Nick Pivetta is still showing up in 24% of my lineup, so it's not like I'm going to be fading him. But I'm going to be well underweight to 41, 42%. Logan Gilbert, I like getting to against Boston here, coming off of a couple of not so stellar outings, but I think that that's kind of brought the ownership back down. It's obviously a difficult matchup. It's obviously a difficult ballpark, but Logan Gilbert at 9,600, I'm kind of willing to be a little bit above that ever so slightly, right around that 24, 26% number. So identical to Pivetta, but Pivetta just pulling way, way, way more ownership. But there's no denying that it is a good strikeout matchup. Anytime you see Seattle and right-handed pitcher there, and the guy has good stuff, I get why he's chalk.
Yeah, and we're if we didn't already get the question in Discord, which I'm checking for it right now, here it is. Hey, I'm Drew wants to know what we are looking at for cash games, and I was just about to say, for GPP purposes, Pivetta is very popular. I get why people are getting to him. We'll talk about stacks in a little bit. The Seattle Mariners are my most rostered team on the entire slate. It doesn't mean I'm not getting to Nick Pivetta. I'm actually even with the field on him, but I think that considering the strikeout upside going up against Seattle and the fact that Nick Pivetta is all over the place in terms of consistency, like you'll see Nick Pivetta go out and pitches starts like, oh my God, 9 shutout innings with Pivetta, 10 strikeouts. And then he's super popular next slate. It's like, hey, look, Pivetta just pitched 2 innings, gave up 7 runs. He's been all over the place this year. So I think that there's a lot of GPP upside on both sides of that, like rostering him, like stacking against him as well. So I do have the Mariners my most rostered offense when we get to that in a little bit here. But hey, I'm Drew asked us who our favorite cash game plays are. And that pitcher, I think it's pretty clearly Skenes and Pivetta.
Wait, Cody Bellinger activated. He's not in the lineup today, though. It says he's activated from the IL that just came through.
Maybe they're going to be changing lineups here. I wouldn't be stunned if we get an alert in like 15 minutes that Pete Crow Armstrong has been removed from the lineup.
Yeah, or Mike Talkman or Ian Happ or somebody else getting traded. Like, it wouldn't completely shock me.
Yeah, or maybe they're just going to use Bellinger as a pinch hitter.
Yeah, but everybody who's in the outfield is left-handed, so that doesn't make sense either. Ian Happ, switch hitter, Talkman lefty, Pete Crow Armstrong lefty.
We'll see. Yeah, and then Clintwood 83 asked us our favorite single entry stacks. For me, it's going to be Nick Pivetta. Pivetta is going to be like 40 to 50% owned in single entry. And a lot of upside pitching into Seattle Mariners, but I think that the Mariners are going to go overlooked is a stack in single entry. So I'm going to be stacking against him. And we'll talk more about single entry stacks later, but because we did get the question from Clintwood, Eric, if you're picking one team to roster in single entry right now, which direction would you be going in?
Seattle Mariners. You and I are so screwed today. It's unbelievable.
There we go.
Yep.
There we go. Let's talk about other pitchers then. We talked about the high-end guys. We talked about the chalk that is coming in on Paul Skenes and Nick Pivetta. The other pitchers that we have as we get through the 8K range, there's also James. We'll group all the 7 and 8K guys together. So below Nick Pivetta, he's $8,500. And you got Jameson Taillon at $8,100. He's 3% owned. You got Andre Palante. He's 1% owned. Alec Marsh, 16% owned. Carson Spears, 1% owned. Jose Quintana, 5% owned. Jordan Montgomery, 1% owned. So the only pitcher in this price range is pulling any kind of ownership. It's Alec Marsh at 16%. And everybody else, 5% or less ownership. What do you like in this pricing range, if anybody, Eric?
Yeah, I think the word like is being used very loosely here. I like the matchup Alec Marsh has. I like his chance for success today. Do I like that he's 16% owned and everybody else is single digits? No, I do not. But I can't really care that much about it when it's a White Sox lineup that has Nicky Lopez leading off. You could see Robert removed at any point in time. Eloy Jimenez removed at any point in time. Benintendi removed at any point in time. There are so many iterations of this White Sox lineup that ends up not coming to fruition and looking even worse than it already does. And not that Alec Marsh is any good. I don't feel that way about him at all, but this is no doubt a good strikeout matchup, 22.3% K rate for Alec Marsh on the season. And, you know, I would like to get to the White Sox if they're going to be like uber low owned in some of these single entry tournaments, but they're not. I mean, they're 6.2% owned. People are still getting there despite some of the pinch hit risk that might exist later on into the evening. Is it Crazy likely? No, but we just saw it with Justin Turner. It does happen a lot this time of year. So for me, I think Flexen is the guy that you're going to attack from a stack perspective. I think Kansas City's rightfully the most popular team, but I don't want to forget about the pitcher on the other side who has a really good chance at getting a win.
It's pretty easily Alec Marsh is the guy to get to in this price range for myself. Anybody else you want to take a chance? I mean, I hate saying this line, but it is kind of true. When you get a smallish baseball slate, 8 games, you can really make a case for any pitcher that's going to be 1% owned that doesn't totally suck, which is the case with a lot of the guys in this pricing range. But for a lot of our audience that's playing, like 1, 2, 3 lineups, maybe up to 5 or so, the guy that I think you should be considering in this price range is Alec Marsh. This is pretty modest ownership at a reasonable price tag in a great matchup against the Chicago White Sox. I really thought we were going to see Marsh come in like 25 to 30% owned. So the fact that we're getting him in just the mid-teens, he's a pretty easy guy to get a little bit overweight too.
Right. The Reds lineup finally got removed or got added there, or did they have a change in it because it just got re-released?
It had not come out yet.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's so weird that it's this late that's coming out in Cincinnati, but such is life here. Throwing this in. Friedel, anything that just stands out that's weird about it? Nope. Looks pretty much what we had. So that's good to know. But
Ellie
what
De
I was
La
going to
Cruz
say
isn't in the lineup, but he was also not projected to be in the lineup.
Correct. Let's see. I'm looking at this. So Carson Spires is the main guy that I wanted to talk about here and just like get your opinion about it. He only has a 20.5% K rate, but like I'd say he has the best underlying metrics of anybody else here. 3.83 ERA looks nice, but a 3.41 expected ERA looks even better. And then look at this matchup. I mean, if we're going to talk about completely unowned pitcher in this range, look at these Cubs. And this is why I brought up the Bellinger thing, because I currently have Spires in my single entry lineup. And that obviously kind of sparked a reaction from me. But Michael Busch, 31.4% K rates. Suzuki, 27.5. Ian Happ, 27. Dansby Swanson, 26.3. Those are 4 high strikeout numbers. And in the top 6 there, if you were to add, if you got activated and had something happen with Bellinger here, I'd want to at least see who got removed or what happened there that would change that forecast. But Carson Spires is the one guy that I was making a case for down here.
Yeah, and people in the chat, like Francisco Rubio, saying Ellie not in the lineup. But yeah, totally expected he wasn't going to be in the lineup today. So not anything that's going to force me to have to change lineups. It was projected to be the case. And then, like Eric said, nothing else that was outstandingly odd or anything like that from the lineup. As far as Carson Spires goes, I wouldn't tell anybody to play him. For me personally, I have him in 2 out of 150 lineups. Technically, that has me overweight to the field on him because he's projected for 1% ownership. Yeah. But no, I don't have any like real actual interest in him.
I'll probably switch it to Marsh here. I'm just worried that in single entry, people like you, like me, like people who do this every single day recognize the Nick Pivetta lights. Well, like the light switch can be on or off at any given point in time, and you don't know which it's going to be. And so you kind of want to be overweight to both sides, but you can't really do that at 41% ownership. And I'm going to be more on the Seattle side today. Probably I'll go back to Alec Marsh, but Carson Spires at 1%. If he ends up being 1%, I can pull the trigger there. Hard for me to do it with my Minnesota Twins, with Jose Quintana. Hard for me to do it with Jordan Montgomery, with the version of Jordan Montgomery we've got this season. Don't really see anything else in the 7K range I want to get to.
Let's talk about the even cheaper pitchers, which they only get shittier from here. Let's group together everybody who's priced sub 7K. So we're talking about Colin Ray, Simeon Woods Richardson, Jake Bloss. And believe it or not, those names of pitchers all pulling ownership. Colin Ray is 15% owned against the Braves. Simeon Woods Richardson is 11% owned against the Mets. Jake Bloss is 13.5% projected owned against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Then you get your punt options who are not pulling ownership. Mitchell Parker at 6,400, 2% owned. Chris Flexen, 1% owned against a very chalky Royals team. And then you got Grant Holmes at the Flatman, only 4K. People are not rostering him at 7% ownership. First thing I want to ask you, though, Eric, is of every pitcher that's priced below 7K, which one do you get the most of?
Simeon Woods Richardson. I don't like it.
I mean, I don't like my answer. My answer is Colin Ray, which I also don't like. I think I've played a decent amount of Colin Ray this year. There's been so many slates where I've gone and looked at my lineups, and we talked about somewhat contrarian pitching options. Like, hey, look, Colin Ray, I've got like 16% owned. He's projected for 8% ownership or something like that. I don't typically love rostering pitchers that don't generate strikeouts because they don't generate strikeouts. Therefore, it really caps their DFS upside. But Colin Ray always seems to pitch on these small slates where all the cheap pitching options are trash. And then I just kind of by default end up getting to him a little bit. He hasn't been great this year. He hasn't totally been terrible either, though. 3.6 ERA, the 4.31 FIP, strikeout rate, 18.2%, more or less in line with his career norms there. But the thing that I do like about Colin Ray is this Braves matchup is just going to be not all that daunting in the short term here. And of the other pitchers that we have to look at for cheap, the matchup that he has against the Atlanta Braves, you got Simeon Wood-Richardson on the road against the Mets. That's a more difficult matchup. And then you got Jake Bloss against the Pittsburgh Pirates. And I just think Colin Ray is quite a bit better than what Jake Bloss is as a pitcher. We'll talk about some of the unknown guys in a little bit as well. But it's Colin Ray for me. Not that I feel great about it, but I've got a little bit more of Colin Ray than the field has.
Okay. Yeah. I do not, because I like money. The guy is a 3.60 ERA. 4.88 expected ERA. I mean, come on, dude. Start getting lit up. I'm over this. He has a 279 expected batting average, and it's the Jesse Pinkman gift. I mean, you can't keep getting away with it every freaking time. I mean, I'm just so over this
on the low end.
I know they do. And that's the whole case that I'm making too, is just like, you're not going to win any argument with any of these. Like, you can poke holes in every single one down here. I think what we're basically saying is, hi, these guys are cheap and they're fully stretched out pitchers, because that's what we generally get this time of year. And, every time of year other than the first 2 weeks of the season. And if they're going to be throwing baseballs on an 8-game slate, they have a chance of being successful. That's kind of how baseball works. So I think Woods-Richardson, probably the guy, even though the Mets have surged to like 110 WRC plus against righties, just ridiculous metrics. He's been all right. He's been a little bit better than I anticipated him to be. 305 xWOBA. So it's basically like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like, he's got the worst matchup of these guys, but I think he's been the best pitcher overall amongst these three that are pulling the ownership. So between Ray, Woods, Richardson, Bloss, I'm going to the Woods Richardson side.
And then we got a question from Sniffs1234 in the Discord channel. He wants to know what are our thoughts on Grant Holmes at 4K. So first off, it's clearly very cheap. Here's the problem that I have with Grant Holmes. He actually has pitched kind of decently this year, but it's been as a reliever. And he stretched out to pitch multiple innings, but that's about it. His last 2 outings, 3 innings, 3 1/3 innings. I think at most, unless he's just crazy efficient, you're probably getting 4 innings out of Grant Holmes. I've got a couple lineups with him in otherwise really expensive stacks. Like if you're making a stack of the Mets or something and you needed to include him in, like, okay, fine. But once again, another one of these guys, if you're somebody who's building 1, 2, 3 lineups, he wouldn't be in any of your lineups. He shouldn't be, at least. I get to him in a couple of lineups just because the price tag is so cheap, but I don't like it at all. Just the other cheap pitching options are also kind of shitty, but I think we're getting 3 or 4 innings out of him.
Yeah, I think we're getting 3 or 4 innings. I was going to say he's viable, but generally we try to like windmill slam 4K guys. It is very noticeable that this is not the best spot to be like just firing him up in bulk. One of the other things about him is he pitched on the 20th, the 24th, and now the 29th. That might not sound like a lot, but like 44, 52 pitches, maybe he does get up to 60, 65, but like, I think considering like the tight window of which he will have made 3 starts within 9 days is like unheard of in Major League Baseball these days. And that makes me a little bit worried that it's probably going to be on the shy side of what, you might anticipate as somebody's built up, because he has just fewer rest days in between that. He doesn't have like a full bullpen session for like a Tuesday when you have a 6-day, 7-day guy who generally is going to have a throwing day in between there. I mean, Grant Holmes, I can't imagine any scenario he gets up to 70 pitches. And on this slate, I think there's enough reason to just get away from that in a majority of spots. He's still a 4K pitcher. I get why you want to do it. I have him in 4 of my 150.
Anything else you want to add about these pretty shitty pitchers? Like the more you talk through the slate, the more you understand how like Nick Pivetta is 40% owned and Paul Skenes is 50% owned. The other options are just really trash.
Yeah, they're really trash, and nobody has like. I mean, you go to the K-prop market today. I mean, what in God's green earth is going on? I mean, everybody is sitting at 4.5, like Tyon, Quintana, Woods Richardson, Bloss. I mean, they don't really know where to set any of this. And then, yeah, Pavetta's 6.5, and you got the 6.5/7.5, depending on what side of it you're for Skenes. it completely makes sense on this slate why they're pulling the ownership. I'm just trying to mix in some Alec Marsh. I think that's the one guy that I don't think he's any good, but I feel more comfortable on that click than I do just about anything else sub 8K.
Yeah, and I see Unfathomable Ace is throwing into the playback chat there, Eric. And I don't really have a strong take on this, but he's saying that he's considering betting the Astros plus 1.5 and minus 170. He wants to know, is that good or is Skenes too good? I just think that's way too much juice to pay.
That's a ton of juice. So you can kind of run the number on what that's going to be and what the VIG is relative to what the money line is. And I'm going to right now. And you should be paying minus 150 at most on that. That is just a bad number. Don't bet it.
Yeah, a lot of juice. I mean, I don't know what the fair odds of it winning are, but just my intuition is that's a lot.
Minus 152 I have for fair odds for it.
There we go. Yeah, minus 170. No good Unfathomable Ace. I do not think that's a number you should be looking at there. And let's see. No other questions about pitchers. Hey, I'm Drew. We'll get to the other component of his cash game question. We get to some stacks. We'll talk about those. But let's talk about FanDuel pitching now, because this is an interesting slate to talk about the FanDuel pitchers as well, because you've got Paul Skenes at 11,500, 37% owned on a single pitcher site. I know on DraftKings, Eric, we said that it's pretty hard to get away from Paul Skenes. We're rostering 2 pitchers. His ownership isn't crazy different on FanDuel. He's also more expensive. I'm more apt to try to get away from on FanDuel at 11,500 on a single pitcher site. Do you feel the same, or are you just going to be riding with the Paul Skenes chalk for FanDuel?
It's pretty hard chalk to get away from. I'm not going to lie. Like, this is a very difficult matchup for most pitchers, like every pitcher, besides maybe Paul Skenes. Like, Houston is not an easy ballpark this season. It's been playing up for power in Minute Maid. He does make mistakes from time to time for the long ball, but we saw that earlier on from him. And lately, he's just been absolutely nails. I mean, he has given up at least 1 home run in 4 of his last 5. So if you want to poke holes in anything, is that there is a propensity for people to hit 102-mile-per-hour fastballs when they get bat on ball, and it goes a long way. Would it shock me to see Jordan Alvarez, Jose Altuve do such a thing? No, it would not. But like, God, is it hard to get away from him? I feel like on FanDuel, I'm not playing there. I'm just running some stuff here as we're talking about it and trying to stall a little bit. But I do not think I would be getting away from Paul Skenes in a majority of my lineups on FanDuel.
I'm not saying maybe I guess I am saying the majority, because like if I was playing 150 lineups, Paul Skenes would still be my most rostered pitcher on FanDuel, but I would be underweight to that 37% number. The one that stands out the most to me from a GPP perspective, the guy we talked about before, Alec Marsh is $8,200 relative to other pitchers on FanDuel. That's pretty cheap. He's got the great matchup against the White Sox, and he's only 8% owned. So if I want to get different, I'm going to be going to Alec Marsh over on FanDuel. And I know Paul Skenes is just all the upside in the world, but it is also kind of glaring to me that in our simulations and top pitchers tool, we have Paul Skenes with a 14% chance to be the highest scoring pitcher on the slate at 37% projected ownership. Yeah, there's also a floor there that a lot of these other pitchers don't have. He's clearly the most likely pitcher to land in the optimal lineup. That 37% mark is just really high to me. So if I'm looking to pivot off of him, Alec Marsh, cash games, you're clearly playing Paul Skenes. And still, I think if you're building out 150 lineups, Paul Skenes would be the pitcher I have the most exposure to on FanDuel, but I wouldn't quite be at the 37% mark. I'd mix in some other guys, some Nick Pivetta exposure. They'll also be underweight to him on FanDuel, but then a little bit more of guys like Nathan Eovaldi at 7%, who don't like quite as much on DraftKings, or Alec Marsh at 8% ownership. That's how I would differentiate some lineups.
With you.
Anything else you want to add about the FanDuel pitchers?
Nope. I think it's pretty clear cut. I mean, I think FanDuel 1 pitcher site isn't nearly as fun as 2 today. So that was kind of clear cut. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I wish I was playing FanDuel today. With an 11.5 Paul Skenes, I don't feel that way. Like I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything there. On DK, I'm going to be overweight to Paul Skenes' projected number. Nick Pivetta, I get it there. I think that might be where I'd be getting more of my Nick Pivetta exposure. 21%. Sure, but he's still going to be markedly less popular than Paul Skenes, whereas on DK, we don't have that at the moment.
Yeah, and we are sponsored here by Underdog. If you guys want to sign up, you get it a 50% deposit bonus up to $250 when you sign up using one of our links or the promo code Stochastic. Eric, in the overall just idea of Pick'em and Underdog and all that, do you have any Pick'em cards you're playing today on any
Yep.
Pick'em site? Doesn't necessarily just have to be Underdog.
Yeah, so I've got a couple of them going on DK Pick 6. I think that there's some really, really good value pieces. Want to at least throw this one out from there, and then we'll talk about Underdog 2, which obviously is the best place possible for best ball period. I'm up to 200 drafts over there. I'm having an absolute blast this year. It's the first year I've really decided that I was going to hit it hard because I think that there were a number of just ADPs that I didn't agree with for the first time in a very, very long time. And I'm very excited about that over there. But from a baseball perspective today, the one thing that just drastically changed, and it does lock in 4 minutes over there, so you got to hurry. You've got Steven Kwan and Jose Ramirez. They go from having to face Jack Flaherty to facing the Detroit bullpen that is 24th in WAR this season, has a bunch of coming in, but you get the batting order 1-3, a bunch of guys like Joey Wentz that might be showing up to eat up a lot of innings. It is a markedly better spot for those guys. And so those fantasy point numbers were put in this morning when it was assumed to be Jack Flaherty. Now that he's on the trade block, you're getting Jose Ramirez at 7.5 fantasy points. I've got him north of 10. Steven Kwan at 6.5 fantasy points. I've got him around 9. This is a good spot, whether you want to talk about mean or median projection. As for Underdog today, there were a number of spots that I thought were good earlier on in the day. I do think the more that I've been playing MLB Pick'em, the more I try to get those cards in first thing in the morning. Pick 6, that doesn't matter because you keep the same lines throughout the entire day. But I had some stuff that I was going to fire up this morning, but I was still in the Nevada side of things. I was over in Reno, so I wasn't able to put the Pick'em cards in. Right now, I'm looking at some of the fantasy point numbers. I think this might be the interesting one. We've seen a lot of pitchers get inflated in specific spots. I think Paul Skenes sitting at 41.5 fantasy points for FanDuel purposes. It's a pretty big number to me. I would probably be going less on that. It's not for the faint of heart.
And I do see we got the super chat there from Philly Phantom. He asked the must plays for cash today. So Philly Phantom, just let me know which site. I generally assume DraftKings when people don't include a site, but I don't remember which site it is that you play on. So just let me know and then I could answer that. And then we've got Chris Williams says, not sure if he's in the chat, but shout out to Sotex, won himself a tournament again over the weekend. And he says, one chat Muppet thinks he never wins. So Sotex, congrats on winning a GPP. I did not see that. And then also shout out to Chris Williams, who gifted out the 5 YouTube memberships. But yeah, Sotex winning a GPP this weekend. So shout out to Sotex for whichever GPP it was that he ended up winning there. One of the good guys in chat. One of the good guys, our friend Sotex. I've known him for, Sotex
Many
probably
moons.
like 6-7 years or something. He was one of the first commenters on my old Basketball Monster article back in the day, way back. Started that
EMAC was 5.
Way back in the day. All right, let's see. Jordan, pull up the lineup generator. Let's build some lineups for DraftKings and see what it is that shows up. And let's go Contrarian today. All stack types, but Contrarian because it's only 8 games. Yeah, build some Contrarian lineups. If you guys want to sign up for the lineup generator or any other packages we have here, links are down below in the YouTube description box. And any package you sign up for does come with access to our Discord channel. Seen a lot of Cubs, it looked like. Oh, yeah. Paul Skenes. So building Contrarian lineups, this is pretty close to the exposure I have. Paul Skenes, about 2/3 of lineups. And then you're seeing a lot of Cubs here. Patrick Wisdom, Seiya Suzuki, Nico Horner, Dansby Swanson. So those 4 hitters are our 4 most rostered. And then you're seeing Alec Marsh is our 2nd most rostered pitcher. One thing that's standing out a lot to me here, Eric, is when we built Contrarian lineups, who isn't showing up? Nick Pivetta, who you and I are both trying to stack against a little bit today. I'm wondering if you click on the stack exposures there, Jordan. Let's see. Are there any? Yeah, we got 1 Mariner stack of the lineups we built. Nothing all that significant. And as I mentioned before, Mariners, they are my most rostered stack of the entire slate, considering with Pivetta projected for 40% ownership. The team we're getting to the most here, Eric, it is the Chicago Cubs. So we've talked about we're playing the Mariners in single entry. In large field tournaments, are you getting the most of the Mariners still, or is it a different team that's landing in your lineups most frequently?
No, it's the Mariners. It was always going to be the Mariners. I had a feeling it was always going to be the Mariners. And I will say I'm a little bit surprised at the ownership today. It's Nick Pivetta This is the most feast or famine guy that we've got in baseball. He can go and strike out 10. He can also get hit into the next galaxy. It's just such an easy spot in tournaments to look at the Seattle Mariners that are revamping their lineup. Obviously, adding Justin Turner is going to be even more fun, but Randy Arozarena, my highest owned batter on the slate. 3 of my top 5 highest owned batters, all Seattle Mariners today. My highest owned 5-man stack, my highest projected 5-man stack in the Sims tool. I mean, I'm just getting to all of these guys, and I have absolutely no problem with it 1 through 9.
Yeah, it's for me, Mariners the most in large field GPPs. With that said, my offense exposure, it is quite a bit more spread out than it normally is. I have 6 teams that I have double-digit percentage of as a stack. Mariners leading the way. They're the one I have the most of. It's the only team I'm more than 15% of as a stack. The other teams that I'm getting to double-digit amount of: Royals, Cubs, Diamondbacks, Reds, Braves. So those 6 teams. Any of those sound crazy to you, or anything you really disagree with, or should I repeat it there, Eric?
Yeah, repeat it one time, because I didn't know you were going to transition into that.
Mariners, and I'm reading these off in order of the amount of exposure I have to them. Mariners, Royals, Cubs, Diamondbacks, Reds, Braves. Those are the 6 teams I have double-digit exposure to.
Okay. I don't have any issue with anything you said. I do have Washington in my top 6, and I don't have what was the one that you said that I heard that I did not have? Braves. I don't have Braves at all.
That's funny because I also, my cheap pitcher I had the most of was Colin Ray, and you didn't like Colin Ray. So I figured you would be on the Braves. But so for me, and it's not like I have a ton of Colin Ray, it's like 18% or something. I'd have to pull my pitcher exposure back up. It was less than 20%, but it was a little bit more than the field. But then as far as the Braves go, they're only projected for 4% ownership. So I do like getting overweight to the field to them a little bit as well there. But yeah, so the way that I'm looking at offense, pretty spread out today. Those are the 6 teams that I ultimately have the most of. The chalkiest offense on this slate. We've gotten questions about cash games as well. We got the super chat from Philly Phantom, as well as, hey, I'm Drew in Discord asking us about our favorite options for cash games. Pitcher's pretty clear. If you're playing on FanDuel, you're playing Paul Skenes. You're playing on DraftKings, you're going Skenes and Pavetta for cash games. And then at offense in cash games, you just want to load up on the Kansas City Royals. They've got a good matchup against Chris Flexen. They're going to be super popular. They are pulling, 15% projected ownership for the Kansas City Royals. So they're my second most roster team, and I'm underweight to the field to them when they're pulling 15% ownership. So second most rostered offense, don't get quite as much of the field as what everybody else is doing. There's not another team that has double-digit ownership today. So the Royals are about double the ownership of the Diamondbacks, who are the second most popular team. But for cash games, totally makes sense to go to them. If you look at some of the individual hitters here, I think the most rostered hitter either is or close to is being the Kansas City Royals bat at each position. So a catcher, your 2 most popular catchers today are Freddie Fermin and Salvador Perez. At first base, most popular first baseman on slate, number 1 is Salvador Perez because he's MPE. Number 2 is Vinny Pasquantino. At second base, the highest projected owned second baseman on slate, it's Michael Massey. At third base, it's actually Royce Lewis, followed by Maikel Garcia. At shortstop, Bobby Witt Jr. At outfield, MJ Melendez, Hunter Renfroe. Those are your 2 most popular outfielders. Play as many of the Royals as you can in your cash games today. They're going to be popular. It makes sense. For cash games, you don't have to worry about the ownership. Just load up on the Royals. Bobby Witt is the number 1 overall priority, though.
Yeah, Chris Flexen sucks. I mean, you're playing Bobby Witt. Jake Bloss scratched. Yo, getting some money down. Jake Bloss scratched.
Ooh. Who's starting in his place?
That's a great question. Are we going to get a 4K crapper getting thrown up there from whatever? But all I know is that makes Pittsburgh a lot more appealing.
I mean, Jake Bloss kind of sucks too.
Well, it kind of sucks too. And then you're going to bullpen. But like, I do think they have to put out somebody to get shelled. And I mean, Houston is in the doldrums. This was like a starting rotation 2 years ago that it was just like, what a juggernaut. And look at them now with all the injuries and all the other shit that they have going on. Verlander on the IL. Hunter Brown had a terrible first. 2 months of the season before turning it around and becoming who he was asked to be. Blanco came out of nowhere to kind of save them, but they have McCullers hurt. They have JP France hurt. They have like anybody who's remotely good hurt from that starting rotation. It's just like, what in the world? And yeah, Framber Valdez has fallen off a cliff. This is just an interesting one, but I think the main thing to pay attention to for our purposes here is like, do we get somebody from AAA called up here, or is it going to just be a true bullpen game? Because obviously bullpen, that would not make the Pittsburgh fun at all. But there are iterations of this that come out where I want to try to get to some Pittsburgh with professional hitters like Mr. Brian Reynolds, who's just a ridiculous human being. You get Bart is batting 5th, I believe, today. But yeah, I'm going to try to figure out. I'm digging, trying to find out who could start for Houston.
I can't imagine it's going to be a better matchup. Jake Bloss has a 6.94 ERA, a 5.79 expected ERA, a 7.61 FIP. And then you look at his projections. Depth chart has him with a 5 ERA the rest of the year. Steamer, same number, 5 ERA. Zips has him at a 4.67 ERA. The Bat has him at 5.06 ERA the rest of the season. It's either going to be a bullpen game, which is going to be much worse, or just going to be, at best, a comparable shitty starting pitcher. I just don't know how they find somebody worse than Jake Bloss put on the
Yeah, that's probably true. Is Bloss say he's the first girl scream on the track? Yeah, he's not very good at all.
Here's what's easy to do if you are building your lineups right now. I am just going to really quickly go into our Sims tool. I am going to do a really big negative ROI boost to Jake Bloss, just to make sure that he's out of all my lineups. And then once we do get confirmation on whoever the pitcher is, I'll rerun stuff afterwards. But for now, if you guys are using our Sims tool, I think that's the easiest way to go about and change this really quick, is just take Jake Bloss out. I don't think this is going to have like a substantial impact on the Pirates hitters, unless it is a bullpen game. Then it's just a worse scenario for them, and you probably don't want to be stacking them. Anything else that you have with the Jake Bloss being scratched? Any other fallouts you could think of?
Let's see. I'm just going through it. I mean, it's definitely Jose Ramirez already covered the 1.5 hits plus runs plus RBIs on pick 6 today. So that's a good start. Go team. That feels nice. 1-0 Guardians over in that one. No, I feel like the Jake Bloss thing. I mean, obviously just get him out of your lineups. That was the main thing, but not like anybody was running to the window to play him in some like crazy amount of them here. We had 13.5% on DK, but 1% I had on FanDuel when I was looking at that here. Yeah, I just got him out of everything super quick. It's not that difficult.
Yeah, that is what I did as well. Any other thoughts on these lineups in the lineup generator? If not, we'll build some for FanDuel.
Yeah, the Cubbies, Arizona pulling a ton there. Washington getting absolutely no love. That is, well, it's a prove-it spot, Mr. Jordan Montgomery, coming off of the IL. Last time out against Kansas City, he looked a lot better, but the fly balls were still there. I'm going to be playing a lot more Washington, it would appear, than the lineup generator.
And anything else you want to add about the Nationals as a contrarian stack while Jordan is building these lineups here? You don't have to add anything if you don't want to, by the way.
No, I don't. I'm done.
All right. So let's see what we end up getting to on the FanDuel side of things. And I'm also going to refresh ownership to see what that is looking like. We have Paul Skenes showing up in about half of our FanDuel lineups. I'm curious, what pitchers do we have who are not Paul Skenes here, Jordan?
That's a great question.
Logan Gilbert, sensible. Nathan Eovaldi, sensible. Alec Marsh next. Oh, some Nick Pivetta. Yeah, that makes sense. And
I think on FanDuel,
so actually,
a lot
not
more
really getting
him.
to Alec Marsh. He's the contrarian pitcher I like over on FanDuel, but lineup generator not liking him quite as much there. Stack exposures, Jordan. Let's check out what we have there. Diamondbacks, Royals, Reds, Cubs. Once again, though, like pretty spread out from the lineup generator. This is another one of these slates where there isn't one real clear, obvious offense. The field is playing the Royals a ton. 17% ownership for the Royals over on FanDuel. The Cubs are 12% owned. Every other team is sub 10%. If you're building one single entry lineup for FanDuel, Eric, what direction would you go in when considering that we don't have the crazy Pivetta chalk?
Single entry on FanDuel. I'd probably still be going Skenes.
No, at offense.
Oh, and offense. Oh, I'm such a piece of shit. Here we go.
Hey, everybody gets one thing right per show. You just hit yours on the head.
Yeah, I was done. I got my Jose Ramirez on the site that isn't even our sponsor. Good job, Eric. Way to go. Let's do. I'm just organizing this. It's still going to be Cubbies for me in Arizona. Arizona, I got a lot of on FanDuel, which is, again, it's weird because against Mitchell Parker, kind of like attacking Jordan Montgomery at their current ownerships a little bit more, but just going off of what the Sims tool is showing me, I've got a lot of Chicago, a lot of Arizona. So those would be the main spots to be going to. Kansas City, obviously going to be chalky as well. So, I mean, you could put all three of those together. It looks pretty similar to DK for me.
Yeah, it would be the Diamondbacks for myself, and not like real complicated analysis here, but first teams that I'd want to take off of consideration for FanDuel, the Cubs and the Royals. Both of them are going to be so popular as stacks on FanDuel. And then I look at our top stacks still and say, like, all right, which teams are lower owned that have comparable top stack odds? And you got the Arizona Diamondbacks. They have a 9% chance to be the top scoring team on the slate. Basically the exact same mark as the Cubs. You're getting the Diamondbacks at 8% ownership as a team compared to the 12% on the Cubs. So I like the Diamondbacks, and that's also what's showing up in the lineup generator here. Lots of Diamondbacks. They're one of my core stacks on DraftKings. I think they look good on FanDuel as well. Mitchell Parker, not a guy that I'm particularly high on. He's been all right this year. He does have a 4.34 ERA, 4.33 expected ERA. He's like as middle of the rotation as a pitcher could possibly be, but projection sources are pretty light on him moving forward. Doesn't look like somebody who's expected to be all that great. And his minor league numbers weren't terrific either. So for instance, in AA last year, he ended up making 25 appearances, 23 starts, did generate some strikeouts, but at a 4.2 ERA, 3.8 xFIP down there. Then you look at 2022 in A-ball, he did have a 2.88 ERA, but a 4.88 xFIP down in AA a couple years ago. So it was never somebody who had a whole lot of success in the minor leagues. He's actually been quite a bit better in the major leagues than he ever was in the minor league level. So I do think Mitchell Parker is pretty likely to be worse going forward than what he was in the past. So Diamondbacks, I think it's a pretty good contrarian-ish team to be getting to.
Yeah, 225 expected ISO up against righties, just a 19.5% K rate. And as you work through this lineup, I mean, Arizona's made it pretty clear cut that they're going to bury Corbin Carroll forever. Like, he's just never going to be in these lineups against lefties, it would appear. So it's like Marte, Moreno, Gurriel, Walker, Grichuk. You don't have a lefty until Jake McCarthy there batting sixth, and then Alec Thomas, the other one, batting eighth. This is a difficult spot for Mitchell Parker, no doubt about it. I get why the chalk is there. It's kind of also like making Jordan Montgomery prove it. It was one start last time, and it was just the first time in a long time we saw him be mediocre or okay. He was getting completely shelved at the beginning of this season. So between Parker and Montgomery, with these two teams at their current ownership, I'm playing 3 Washington Nationals in single entry. So I'm going to be rolling that out.
Yeah, I did see that somebody in chat, I think it was Rance, had brought up that we hadn't brought up he brought up that we hadn't brought up the Mets on this show and wanted to know why we're not really liking the Mets as a stack. It to me is really just a price point issue. The Mets are all super expensive. I'm going to pull up their salaries here. All right, so the Mets at offense, I mean, you got Lindor. Lindor's been crazy this year. He's like a stealth MVP candidate. The reason that he's not getting any actual consideration is Ohtani's just been insane. He's kind of running away with it. But he got this crazy high price tag on Lindor. You've also got, okay, so Lindor is $5,700. JD Martinez is $4,900. Nimmo is $5,000. Pete Alonso is $5,200. You got Mark Ventos is $4,600. Then you've got 4K price tags on guys later on the lineup, like Luis Torrens, Jesse Winker's 4K, Bader's $3,900, McNeil is $3,500. It's a really, really expensive stack for a team that isn't in a great hitting ballpark and has a not great matchup against Simeon Woods Richardson. It's not like a terrible one or anything, but he's another guy. He's just kind of like a mediocre middle of the rotation pitcher. I really do have an issue with the price tag on the Mets. It makes it difficult to stack them.
Yep, it's difficult to stack them, and you're missing Alvarez, right? So, like, you're replacing Alvarez with, like...
And Torrens is expensive playing in his place.
Yeah, because Alvarez got dinged up for something with his shoulder, but yeah, it's definitely Definitely a weird spot. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just
Yeah,
looking.
4K Luis Torrens. No, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Checking to see if we had any other questions that came into Discord. And yes, we've got Einstein wants to know, are we getting to the Boston Red Sox at all today? And outside of the teams that I mentioned as my core stacks, like I've got some exposure here and there to some other teams, but I don't have, outside of the teams I mentioned before, the Mariners, Cubs, Reds, Royals, Diamondbacks, Braves. I don't have a ton of any other team. It's like 2-3% of some other squads. The Boston Red Sox, yeah, I don't have Red Sox stacks. Do you, Eric?
Holy shit, Lane Thomas to be traded to the Guardians. That's going to change something for me. That lineup's not out yet. Now that helps.
Also, we got Taylor Scott is, first off,
he's so
Taylor
good.
wrong.
Taylor Scott is so good.
Who spells Taylor? Tayler. But anyway,
Taylor
so Taylor,
Scott.
it's a bullpen game for the Astros.
Yeah, he's one of the best relievers in baseball. So we're not going to fuck around with that.
Yeah, he's only going to pitch, I assume, in inning. Let's see, what's the deepest he's gone? Maybe 2. He's gone as far as 2 innings in games this year. Here's what this does. Terrible spot for the Pittsburgh Pirates now, because you're just going to get a bullpen game out of the Astros. The other part of this as well is clearly there's nothing to play from the Astros when you're getting a bullpen game as well.
Yep.
Also, 100%. Is Jake Bloss just going to enter the game as a long reliever?
Yes, probably. There's a chance for it.
Yeah, I'm looking at unless he's involved in some sort of trade, which I don't think is the case, because who the fuck wants Jake Bloss? But the most likely scenario here to me, with zero information, just intuition, Taylor Scott pitches the first inning and then Jake Bloss comes in relief after that.
Yeah, because you don't want him facing Brian Reynolds 3 times. I wouldn't. That would be problematic.
Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening there. I didn't like the Pirates anyway, and there isn't really anything to mine out of that now. Another question that we had from Discord, it is from Sniffs. Sniffs wants to know if we are getting to the Twins as a stack, and that is another no for me. And then another issue too with the Boston Red Sox at Einstein Mass. I mean, they're going against Logan Gilbert. There aren't that many good pitchers on the slate. Logan Gilbert's one of the only good pitchers that are going. So that makes me also less interested in the Red Sox. Just a really difficult matchup. Twins, you get into your hometown team at all, Eric?
No.
That is also a no from me. We have the Twins in our most recent update, pulling 7% ownership as a team. Like, I don't think that the Twins are necessarily a terrible team to be stacking against Jose Quintana, but there's just better spots on the slate. We got 8 games, 16 teams. The Twins would be like, I don't know, 8th on the list for me or something. They're just very much in the middle. We got them right around appropriately owned. We got them 7% owned, 7% chance of being a top stack. Not saying it's an outright fade, but not a priority for me either. And no other questions there that we're getting. So awesome. We are approaching lock here, Eric. If you guys haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Any other stacks we haven't talked about that are important to your lineups? If not, we'll do our dong picks.
I will say Boston just for pure leverage purposes. Logan Gilbert, he's 23.5% owned. It's not like he's even chalk on this slate. He's been awesome lately, 9,600, but you go from pitching in Seattle for a majority of your starts, and then you show up in Fenway, hitter friendly, good weather, everything kind of checking across the board. And he's been stellar on the road. Everybody wanted to let me know that. Logan Gilbert, stellar on the road. Or I've heard that multiple times today from different places. And I got to say, I don't really care about that. I just care that this is a difficult matchup with a Boston team that has guys who run, guys with power. Overall, not going to be a priority by any means, but a stack that I think getting to a couple of pieces of this against a chalky pitcher definitely works out.
Dong picks. Hit me with it, Eric. Hit me with the dong. Who's going yard today?
And it wouldn't be the first time. Randy Arozarena, everybody, plus 450 now. Oh, my dear Lord. Randy Arozarena, he's going to, I mean, what? He's been striking out less. He's been making contact. 3 hits in his in his 8 total at-bats that he's had now with the Mariners over the weekend against the White Sox. Don't care about any of that. I care about his launch angle getting better. I care about, again, avoiding those strikeouts and just getting bat on ball. Nick Pivetta gives up lots of power to both sides. Give me Randy Arozarena.
My most rostered one-off on the slate is TJ Friedl, so I'll go with him as my home run pick for the day. I've got TJ Friedl in 18% of my lines, about double the field there on him. That's going to be my home run pick, TJ Friedl. Let's see what we have from the YouTube chat, see what people are going with for their home run spots. We've got Byron Buxton is the pick from BX44. We've got Juan Yepez from Comment God. I think Comment God went with Juan Yepez one day last week and ended up hitting a homer as well. We've got Taco933 going with Randall Grichuk. Almost made the can't fail. Royce Lewis. There's one time this year, Royce Lewis, he just penciled. It was like, oh yeah, he's going to homer. He's either going to get hurt or he's going to homer. It was one of those two outcomes every single day. So we've got Sotex agreeing with me. He's going with TJ Friedl. Casey Leatherwood's going to Vinny Pasquantino and Luke Raley. We've got Lourdes Gurriel from Dangerous Dave. Hunter Renfroe from Andy Melman. We've got Tyler Stevenson from Trip. We've got Malukar going with Pete Alonso. We've got Alex Call from Reg Kell. Aaron Hines going with Lars Nootbaar. Ken Ratty's going with Lourdes Gurriel. We've got Gavin Sheets from EMAC. We got Luis Robert from NY Stiegel. Francisco Rubio's going with Ryan Jeffers. And then finally, Blake Moore's got Ketel Marte. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Oh, Jazz Chisholm just did his first homer as a New York Yankee. So if anybody picked, somebody should have just thrown in Jazz Chisholm. He would have gotten it right there. Anything else that you guys ever want to ask Eric or I about? If you signed up at Stokast, get access to our Discord channel, get at us in there anytime you want. Thank you guys very much for watching. Have a great night. See you back here tomorrow.